Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of NASCAR's Almost Champions, Dave Marcis. Dave Marcis is a former NASCAR Cup Series driver and owner who competed from 1968 through 2002. His team struggled as the sport grew, and more money and stronger competition pushed Marcis towards the back of the pack as his career came to a close, just after the turn of the century in 2002. This was not always the case, though. In fact, throughout the 1970s, Dave Marcis was one of NASCAR's top drivers, spending time behind the wheel of some of NASCAR's top owners at the time. Teams, such as Krauskopf and Rod Osterlund. This Wisconsin native got his racing career started competing on local short tracks around his local area, while also working as a mechanic at a Chevrolet dealership. This allowed Marcis to both gain technical knowledge as well as some access to cars. Before long, he made the life-changing decision to move to the Southeast and pursue a NASCAR career. He got his NASCAR career started back in 1968, making 10 NASCAR Grand National Series. Nowadays, the NASCAR Cup Series starts behind the wheel of Larry Ware's number 30 Chevrolet. Marcis's best start was 6th, and his best finish was 7th, both coming in the fall at Augusta. Overall, in 10 starts, he scored 2 top 10s. Dave would remain in the number 30 for the 1969 Cup Series season, though Larry Wares would only be the team's car owner for Marcis's first start of the season, at Montgomery, starting 17th and finishing 10th. From there, Milt Lunda took over as the number 30 team's car owner. After 3 races, they would also switch to Dodge from Chevrolet. Marcis showed he definitely had the talent to be in this series, though his equipment was not on the same level as his talent. In 36 starts, the team had 22 DNFs. We got to remember that this was a way different time, and sometimes it was great just to simply finish a race. Mechanical issues were very prevalent. His best start was 2nd at Kingsport in the summer, and his best finish was 3rd at Langley Field in the spring. Overall, in 36 starts, Marcis scored 3 top 5s and 11 top 10s, finishing 19th in final Cup Series point standings. This is Dave's best decade in NASCAR, the 1970s. And starting in 1970, Dave Marcis became an owner-driver, as he now became the owner of his number 30 Dodge, making 35 starts throughout the season. His best start was 2nd at Langley Field in the spring, and his best finish was 3rd 3 times at Hickory, Kingsport, and Malta in the summer. Not only did he make 35 starts in his own equipment, Dave also made 1 start in a number 51 Chevrolet, owned by Bill Strong at Columbia in the summer, starting 18th and finishing 18th. Then, he also made 2 starts in a number 97 Ford for Cecil Gordon. His best start was 15th, and his best finish was 5th, both coming at International Raceway Park in West Virginia in the summer. There were 2 other one-off starts for teams that Marcis would make in 1970. Wayne Smith's number 30 Chevrolet at South Boston in the fall, starting 23rd and finishing 24th. The following week at Darlington in the fall, driving a number 62 for John Keselowski, both starting and finishing 29th. The final 6 starts that Dave would make in the 1970 season would be for Earl Brooks in the number 26 Ford. His best start was 9th, and his best finish was 7th, both coming at Raleigh in the fall. For patching an entire season together, through other little deals with teams, Marcis had 47 out of 48 starts in 1970, overall scoring 7 top 5s and 15 top 10s, finishing 9th in final Cup Series point standings. Marcis continued to operate his race team, Marcis Auto Racing, making 23 starts in 1971, behind the wheel of his own number 2 Dodge. Again, he definitely showed flashes of greatness, though he just did not have the equipment as some of the very top teams. His best start was 1st twice, at Richmond in the spring and Hickory in the fall. His best finish was 2nd at Malta in the summer. Also making 1 start for Krauskopf's number 71 Dodge at Talladega in the spring, starting 2nd and finishing 9th. Then for James Roop's number 11 Chevrolet Camaro at Winston-Salem, starting 15th and finishing a solid 5th, followed by 2 starts in Doc Faustina's number 5 Plymouth. His best start was 19th at Michigan in the fall, and his best finish was 34th at Talladega in the fall. The final 2 starts that Marcis made was in Ray Nichols' number 99 Plymouth. His best start and finish both was 5th, both coming at Darlington in the fall. Overall, in 29 Cup Series starts, he scored 2 poles, 0 wins, 9 top 5s, and 14 top 10s, finishing 21st in final Cup Series point standings. The entrance of R.J. Reynolds to NASCAR to have their product Winston become the series title sponsor, forming what was then known as the Winston Cup Series. Also, condensing the schedule down from close to 50 races a season down to around 30 races a season in 1972. This made it much more realistic for Dave Marcis to be able to field his own race car for an entire season's schedules a bit easier, though he would still make some starts for other teams, especially when a more competitive or more funded ride would come along. Dave would make 18 starts in his own number 2 Dodge. His best start was 5th twice, at Rockingham in the spring and Trenton in the summer. His best finish was 3rd twice, at Martinsville in the spring and Bristol in the summer. Also making 7 starts for Roger Penske's number 16 AMC Matador. His best start was 5th at Darlington in the fall, and his best finish was 7th twice, at Darlington and Rockingham in the fall. Then he made 2 one-off starts, one in Hammer Mason's number 87 Mercury at Michigan in the spring, starting 36th and finishing 30th. Then Marcis made 1 start in Neil Castle's number 06 Plymouth at North Wilkesboro in the fall, starting 12th and finishing 6th. Overall, in 27 starts, he scored 5 top 5s and 11 top 10s, finishing 15th in final Cup Series point standings. In 1973, Dave again would field his own race cars for himself in the majority of the season, making 15 starts in his own number 2 Dodge. His best start was 8th twice, at North Wilkesboro and Nashville in the spring. His best finish was 4th at Bristol in the spring. The remaining 8 starts he would make would be also in a number 2, though Roger Penske would be the owner, as Marcis would run his Matadors in these 8 races. His best start was 6th at Rockingham in the spring. His best finish was 5th at Rockingham in the fall. Overall, in 23 starts, he scored 3 top 5s and 6 top 10s, finishing 24th in final Cup Series point standings. Things really picked up for Marcis starting in 1974, when he would field his own number 2 Deppy Enterprises Dodge in 26 events, really able to show that he could run consistently near the front of the pack. His best start was 3rd at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was 4th twice at Darlington and Martinsville in the fall. Early in the season, Marcis made 1 start in Roger Penske's number 16 Matador at Darlington in the spring, starting 5th and finishing 6th. Then, near the conclusion of the season, he made 2 more starts in Krauskopf's K&K Insurance number 71 Dodge. His best start was 11th, and his best finish was 29th, both coming at Rockingham in the fall. For the season finale at Ontario, he was behind the wheel of Elmo Langley's number 64 Ford, starting 26th and finishing 17th. Overall, scoring 6 top 5s and 18 top 10s, finishing to that point a career best 6th in final Cup Series point standings. The following season, in 1975, Dave Marcis joined Krauskopf's number 71 K&K Insurance Dodge team. Harry Hyde served as his crew chief for the 75 season. By far, this would end up being Marcis's best season in his over 30-year NASCAR Cup Series career, as well as the reason for this video's title. His best start was 1st 4 times, at Talladega in the summer, then Dover, Rockingham, and Atlanta in the fall. His best finish was 1st at Martinsville in the fall. Dave was fast all season long, spending 27 weeks inside the top 5 and every week inside the top 10 in Cup Series point standings. The only thing that he could really improved on was how many DNFs the team ended up with throughout the season, which was a reasonably high 12. Overall, scoring 4 poles, 1 win, 16 top 5s, and 18 top 10s, finishing 2nd in final Cup Series point standings. Marcis returned to Krauskopf's number 71 K&K Insurance Dodge again for 1 more season, and would go on to statistically have a stronger season, though he did not finish as high in the point standings as he did the season prior. His best start was 1st 7 times at both Talladega races, Rockingham, Atlanta, North Wilkesboro, Martinsville, and Dover in the spring. His best finish was 1st 3 times at Richmond in the spring, Talladega in the summer, and Atlanta in the fall. Overall, he scored 7 poles, 3 wins, 9 top 5s, and 16 top 10s, finishing 6th in final Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the season, Marcis and Krauskopf parted ways. After 2 very successful seasons, Dave moved back to Roger Penske's number 2 Cam 2 Chevrolet, making 12 starts throughout the 1977 NASCAR Cup Series season. Travis Carter served as his crew chief for the 1977 season. His best start was 5th at Riverside in the spring, and his best finish was 4th 4 times at Riverside, Richmond, and Nashville in the spring, then Michigan in the summer. Also making 2 starts in a number 2 Shoney's Big Boy Chevrolet that he owned himself. His best start was 5th at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 20th at Martinsville in the spring, as well as making 2 starts in Rod Osterlund's number 2 Chevrolet. His best start was 11th, and his best finish was 14th, both coming at Ontario in the fall. The final 2 starts he would make throughout the season was 1 for Henley Gray's number 19 Belden Asphalt Chevrolet at North Wilkesboro, starting 16th and finishing 12th, as well as making one start in Bill Mangan's number 81 Chevrolet in Atlanta in the fall, starting 16th and finishing 36th after steering issues ended his race on lap 148. Overall, he scored 5 top 5s and 7 top 10s, finishing 25th in final Cup Series point standings. Another team owner that Marcis would drive for was Rod Osterlund, starting full-time in 1978, behind the wheel of Osterlund's number 2 Shoney's Chevrolet. 78 was another very strong season for Marcis, spending all 30 races inside the top 5 in point standings. His best start was third twice, at Bristol and Charlotte in the spring. His best finish was second, at Atlanta in the spring. Overall, he scored 14 top 5s and 24 top 10s, finishing 5th in final Cup Series point standings. At the conclusion of the season, Marcis and Osterlund parted ways due to the fact Osterlund wanted to open up a second race team, fielding a car for Dale Earnhardt. After Marcis left, Earnhardt would just take over the number 2 Chevrolet for him, though Earnhardt and Marcis would end up being close friends throughout the remainder of Earnhardt's life. The 1979 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Marcis return to driving his own race cars, making 25 starts. For the first 9 starts of the season, he ran the number 02, and for the remaining races, he switched to the number 71 Chevrolets, both sponsored by Shoney. His best start was 8th, 3 times, at both Bristol races, then North Wilkesboro in the spring. His best finish was 5th at Martinsville in the fall. This was definitely not as strong a season as he had grown accustomed to having with some of the other owners that he had driven for. Overall, scoring 1 top 5 and 6 top 10s, finishing 20th in final Cup Series point standings. As the sport moved into another new decade, Dave would find that throughout the 1980s, that as NASCAR would grow and expand, more money and more competitive teams would eventually begin to push Marcis Auto Racing towards the back half of the field more times than not. In 1980, he returned to his number 71 Buck Stove Hudson Transmission Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles full-time. Claude Queen would serve as his crew chief starting in 1980. This season was pretty solid for Marcis, spending 19 weeks throughout the season inside the top 10 in point standings. His best start was 6th, 3 times, at Riverside and Atlanta in the spring, then Richmond in the fall. His best finish was 3rd at North Wilkesboro in the fall. Overall, scoring 4 top 5s and 14 top 10s, finishing 9th in final Cup Series point standings. For the 1981 NASCAR Cup Series season, as Marcis would for the majority of the remainder of his career, he returned to his number 71 Hudson Transmission and J.D. Stacy Chevrolets, Oldsmobiles, Dodges, Buicks, and Pontiacs. The 1981 season was another serviceable season for Marcis, spending 13 weeks throughout the season in the top 10 in point standings. His best start was 1st at North Wilkesboro in the spring, and his best finish was 3rd at Darlington in the fall. Overall, he scored 1 pole, 0 wins, 4 top 5s, and 9 top 10s, finishing 9th, again in final Cup Series point standings. The 1982 Cup Series season saw Marcis again return to his number 71 J.D. Stacy Chevrolets, Buicks, and Pontiacs full-time. Dave would have a strong season in 1982, though this would be his final season, having double-digit top 10 finishes and a top 10 points finish. His best start was 5th at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 1st at Richmond in the spring. This would be his 5th and final Cup Series victory. Overall, he scored 1 win, 2 top 5s, and 14 top 10s, finishing 6th in final Cup Series point standings. As NASCAR continued to grow in 1983, Dave Marcis slowly began his descent through the rankings, not cracking the top 10 in point standings all season, behind the wheel of his own number 71 Chevrolet full-time. His best start was 7th at Nashville in the summer, and his best finish was 7th at Rockingham in the fall. The team also had 11 DNFs throughout the season, overall scoring 7 top 10s, finishing 11th in final Cup Series point standings. In 1984, Marcis would move to the Ray Mock Enterprises number 75 Pontiac, Raleigh, and Grady Pontiac. Butch Mock served as both co-owner of the team and crew chief in 1984. Throughout the 84 season, Marcis had some bright spots, though honestly I think that by the end of the season, both Marcis and Ray Mock Enterprises were both a little bit disappointed with how the season turned out. Marcis' best start was 3rd at North Wilkesboro in the spring, and his best finish was 4th 3 times at both Bristol races, then Dover in the fall. Overall, he scored 3 top 5s and 9 top 10s, finishing 13th in final Cup Series point standings. As he would for the rest of his career, in 1985, Marcis returned to his own number 71 AEL Rentals, Transmissions Unlimited Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles full-time. Though as the situation was for him as NASCAR's last independent owner and driver, with a smaller budget, he would have to use aftermarket parts leading to more DNFs, racking up 11 throughout the '85 season. His best start was 11th at Riverside in the spring, and his best finish was 8th twice at Richmond and Talladega in the spring, overall scoring 5 top 10s and finishing 18th in Final Cup Series point standings. Dave made his first career Busch Series, now Xfinity Series start, at Bristol in the summer, behind the wheel of a number 05 Advanced Auto Parts Pontiac, starting 16th and finishing 19th. Marcis Auto Racing picked up a new primary sponsor for the 1986 season. Helen Ray came aboard the number 71 Chevrolets and Pontiacs of the teams. Marcis had some solid runs, though his team was plagued by DNFs, netting 14 throughout the season. His best start was 6th at Martinsville in the fall. His best finish was 5th at Dover in the fall, overall scoring 1 top 5 and 4 top 10s, finishing 17th in Final Cup Series point standings. The 1987 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Marcis score the final 2 top 5 finishes of his career, of course behind the wheel of his own number 71 Life Buoy Soap and Helen Ray Chevrolet. His best start was 9th at Martinsville in the fall. His best finish was 3rd twice at Daytona and Watkins Glen in the summer. Throughout the season, the team set in between 24th and 18th in point standings, overall scoring 2 top 5s and 7 top 10s, finishing 18th in Final Cup Series point standings. Life Buoy Soap returned to Marcis Auto Racing's number 71 Chevrolet as the team's full-time primary sponsor in 1988. Marcis's season was as solid as his equipment and the increased level of competition would allow. Ivan Baldwin served as his crew chief for the 1988 season. His best start was 8th at Dover in the spring, and his best finish was 9th at Bristol in the spring, overall scoring 2 top 10s and finishing 19th in Final Cup Series point standings. This would be the final time in his career that he would finish inside the top 20 in points. NASCAR continued its expansion and growth in 1989. Dave Marcis would again run his own number 71 Life Buoy Soap Chevrolet. This is the first season that Dave would start DNQing races. As the years continued to pass, and NASCAR's growth continued and the level of competition continued to rise, the number of DNQs that Marcis would see would also rise. He would DNQ twice in 1989. His best start was 19th at Daytona in the spring, and his best finish was 9th at Martinsville, also in the spring. Though he only had 4 DNFs, so that was solid. Overall, in 27 starts, scoring 1 top 10 and finishing 25th in Final Cup Series point standings. Marcis made his second career Xfinity Series start at Darlington in the spring, behind the wheel of Dwight Huffman's number 70 Dirt Devil Vacuums Buick. He started 36th and finished 19th. Yet another new decade, the 1990s, and by this point in 1990, Marcis had begun testing race cars for his good friend Dale Earnhardt's number 3 GM Goodwrench Chevrolet Richard Childress race team. In return, Marcis Auto Racing would get some parts and extra help funding the team, behind the wheel of his own number 71 Big Apple Markets Chevrolet full-time. Really, all things considered, Dave had an alright season. His best start was 12th at Dover in the spring, and his best finish was also 12th at North Wilkesboro in the spring, overall scoring 8 top 15s and 16 top 20s, finishing 21st in Final Cup Series point standings. To honor those serving in Operation Desert Storm, the 5 branches of the U.S. Armed Forces sponsored race cars in the 1991 Daytona 500. Dave Marcis's number 71 Chevrolet was one of those 5, as the U.S. Coast Guard sponsored his race car, though his race ended early after starting at the rear of the field 42nd, then finishing 35th after he had an engine issue in his race on lap 40. The rest of the season, he was behind the wheel of his number 71 Big Apple Markets Chevrolet. His best start was 7th at Rockingham in the fall, and his best finish was 10th at Dover in the fall. They did DNQ twice. Overall, in 27 starts, they scored 1 top 10, 2 top 15s, and 7 top 20s, finishing 29th in Final Cup Series point standings. For the 1992 NASCAR Cup Series season, Dave Marcis would qualify for every single race throughout the entire season, though it would be for 2 different teams. Of course, his own number 71 Chevrolet. Johnny All served as his crew chief for all but 1 start in his Marcis Auto Racing Chevrolet. Chad Cummings served as his crew chief for the season opener at Daytona. Altogether, Marcis made 22 starts behind the wheel of his number 71. His best start was 13th at Martinsville in the spring, and his best finish was 15th at Charlotte in the spring. Then in Larry Hendrick's number 41 Kellogg Chevrolet for 7 starts. Dennis Conner served as his crew chief while driving the number 41. His best start was 12th at Dover in the fall, and his best finish was 18th at Darlington in the fall. Overall, between the 2 teams, in 29 starts, he scored 1 top 15 and 5 top 20s, finishing 29th in final Cup Series point standings. This would be the final time in his career that he would finish in the top 30 in points. 1993, things really began to fall off just a bit for Dave Marcis, attempting the full schedule, DNQing 6 times. Dale Fishline served as his crew chief for the 1993 season. That number 71 STG Swanson Frozen Foods Chevrolet, his best start was 18th at Dover in the spring, and his best finish was 15th at Martinsville in the spring. Overall, in 27 starts, he scored 1 top 15 and 4 top 20s, finishing 33rd in final Cup Series point standings. Again in 1994, Marcis was behind the wheel of his number 71 STG Olive Garden Chevrolet, attempting all 31 events, only qualifying for 23. The one bright spot was that he was able to score a top 10 finish at Bristol in the spring. This would be his final career top 10 finish. His best start was 6th at North Wilkesboro in the fall. His best finish was the aforementioned 10th at Bristol in the spring. Overall, in 23 starts, Marcis scored 1 top 10, 1 top 15, and 5 top 20s, finishing 36th in final Cup Series point standings. The 1995 NASCAR Cup Series season saw Marcis Auto Racing's number 71 Olive Garden Chevrolet, as was usual, attempt the entire 31-race schedule, qualifying for all but 3 events. His best start was 6th at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was 15th at Michigan in the spring. Overall, he scored 1 top 15 and 3 top 20s, finishing 35th in final Cup Series point standings. NASCAR had just formed the Super Truck Series, now Craftsman Truck Series, in 1995. Dave made one start in the number 31 GM Goodwrench Chevrolet for Richard Childress, starting 10th and finishing 7th at Phoenix in the fall. Prodigy, the NASCAR Cup Series' first internet sponsor, became the number 71 Chevrolet's new primary sponsor for the 1996 Cup Series season. Terry Shirley served as Dave's crew chief for the 1996 season. Again, he only DNQ'd 4 times throughout the season. His best start was 11th at Martinsville in the spring, and his best finish was also 11th at Talladega in the spring. Overall, in 27 starts, he scored 2 top 15s and finished. Overall, in 27 starts, he scored 2 top 15s and 2 top 20s, finishing 38th in final Cup Series point standings. Dave made the final 2 Xfinity Series starts of his career behind the wheel of Ken Schrader's number 52 AC Delco Chevrolet. His best start was 24th at Rockingham in the fall. His best finish was 12th at Charlotte in the fall. Real True Camouflage became the number 71 Chevrolet's new primary sponsor in 1997 and would remain with him until his final start of his career. Even with this sponsor money, the team fell off even more throughout the 1997 season. Terry Shirley began the season as the team's crew chief, but after race 14 at Michigan, he was replaced by Bob Marcis. Once Shirley left the team, Dave would start to DNQ more races than he would qualify for. His best start was 5th at Dover in the spring, and his best finish was 15th at Texas in the spring. Overall, he scored 1 top 15 and 3 top 20s, finishing 42nd in final Cup Series point standings. Nothing improved at all for the wingtip-wearing Dave Marcis in his number 71 Chevrolet. In fact, he would wear these until his final start. He said the leather from them would protect his feet from the heat. They DNQ'd 20 times, only making 13 starts throughout the entire season. His best start was 22nd at Richmond in the fall, and his best finish was 12th at Talladega in the fall. Overall, in 13 starts, he scored 1 top 15 and 1 top 20, finishing 45th in final Cup Series point standings. That following season in 1999, Dave Marcis returned to his number 71 Real True Camouflage Chevrolet, again attempting 33 events, all except Sonoma. His best start was 22nd at Bristol in the spring, and his best finish was 16th at Daytona in the spring. Overall, in 20 starts, he scored 1 top 20, finishing 42nd in final Cup Series point standings. The year 2000, and Dave Marcis' fortunes continued to deteriorate. Returning to his number 71 Real Tree Camouflage Chevrolet, they attempted 30 races, only qualifying for 11. His best start was 9th at Talladega in the fall. His best finish was 23rd at Darlington in the fall, finishing 46th in final Cup Series point standings. This was the first season that he ever DNQ'd for the Daytona 500. After several straight seasons of attempting for all or close to all of the Cup Series schedule, in 2001, Marcis decided to cut back his schedule to only attempting 13 races. Of those 13, he only qualified for 3. His best start was 15th at Talladega in the spring, and his best finish was 32nd at Martinsville in the fall. At the age of 61 years old, Dave Marcis made his final NASCAR Cup Series start behind the wheel of his number 71 Realtree Camouflage Chevrolet in the 2002 running of the Daytona 500, starting 14th and turning some laps among the front runners until his engine would blow up on lap 79, ending his race, leaving him to finish 42nd. Dave Marcis was an excellent driver, who in his prime years was among the very best in NASCAR. So in 883 NASCAR Cup Series starts, he scored 14 poles, 5 wins, 94 top 5s, and 222 top 10s, with the best points finish of second in 1975. He also made 4 Xfinity Series starts, as well as 1 Krauskopf Truck Series start, scoring 1 top 10 in his only career start. Thanks for watching this video. Thank you all for your support. Take care.